Oh, Jello, I'm going to call this one Master of Science in Ecocentric Worldviews 689, 2023. I'm 2 days late. I tried doing it yesterday and I read the wrong part that I'd already read. So I'm going to continue reading from one of the course readings. If I would have had students, that would have been discussing how, ecocentric worldviews developed, how a person that seeks to pursue a life that walks the talk of this worldview would act, and it would have also given participants ideas about what they would have wanted their field trip portion of the course to be. Design something that would have, helped them act in a way that would bring them closer or that was similar to somebody who already had an ecocentric worldview. So, some short time ago, I said that I wanted to talk more about what is the possibility of astronomical effects other than Anthropocene related climate factors, but also the possibility of global cooling or the snowball effect. And there is a person that knows a lot about this, and he said that he's not available until February, so I've decided to see if I could get him on this topic as maybe the last one for March 1st. I mean, there's a lot of subjects that will not have been done. I might get back to it one day, but I decided a while ago that this was the last of the 3 years of myself offering this course as myself being the only student. So I'm late as a student by a couple of days with this posting, but I kind of know the professor personally, so I'm okay. Anyways, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to continue reading where I was, and I am going to do many of these during the month to try to catch up to the readings and see how I've progressed in my life or add more detail to what I wrote as I'm reading this. That was very much related to this one, how I fired the master's degree faculty when they were not walking the talk. And, a person doesn't want to pay student loans when the majority of the faculty make those career choices to be part of the problem of misdefining and misbehaving in relation to sustainability. Part of my angst towards and this is starting a new paragraph on page 10 of 26, which is the line number 6. Part of my angst towards the Muslim program was how I was advised against my tendency to challenge the prevailing literature on topics I was choosing to pursue. In my opinion, this tendency to reflect upon the root from which a paradigm is formed reflects innovative thinking in its purest form, a concept that was claimed by faculty to constitute one of the fundamental components of the program. I am aware that my unique personality often leads me to journey down the road less traveled, which is a book I read a long time ago. A little too Christian for me, but not for the mere satisfaction of challenging authority, but due to what strikes me as simple common sense. I wondered at the time if my professors were motivated more by their tendency to support the dominant paradigm or an altruistic desire to help their students by simplifying their research parameters. And if they were helping their students, were they doing it to help themselves and not spend as much time per student? So kind of whatever their motivations were, they were not very noble if they consider themselves within the realms of higher education. The irony is that my topics and ideas were not entirely new, as they did fall within the precepts of ecocentric sustainability, a concept about which there exists literature, possibly overlooked by some members of the faculty, but not all. I mean, some of them mentioned some of these ecocentric pioneers in the early courses, and somehow didn't realize how they were incongruent and they behaved, in opposite of this while claiming how great those pioneer heroes were. And that's why they had their great offices, but they didn't behave that way at all. So they were very much conformists, the teachers that I had, and living one day at a time with the skill sets that they had to live such fast-paced, stressful lives. I did give a little bit of counseling to one or two of them. As my sense of aloneness grew, I found myself asking, shouldn't I simply go about my own business? I don't mean business world, but I felt at that point that I should just tell my faculty professors, and this is hopefully them reading this, right? And I don't think that most of them read it, but thanks for attempting to educate me, but I'm growing more confused about who is playing the role of educator, even as my sense of isolation, feelings of exile, and extent of student debt continue to grow. My sense of isolation and exile during the program also led me to assume the role of observer. One pattern I detected was that newly hired instructors were essentially carbon copies of the existing professors. My heart grew heavier when it became clear while attending subsequent cohorts' thesis defenses that students were also being cloned into ideological duplicates of their own thesis supervisors. Now, to comment on this paragraph, I went to 2 different presentations that we were invited to by the faculty as master's students. I'm not sure if the other bachelor's students were invited, but and there is one I was hoping they wouldn't hire, and there is one where the person had potential. But you can tell by the questions of the feedback of the teachers to this teacher who was applying for a faculty position and who came to Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo to give a presentation as an example of who he is and mingle. There's one I don't think they should have hired, and they did. And I'll just say Spider-Man there. They didn't hire Spider-Man, but somebody with the name of Spider-Man. And I'm not sure what happened after that, but I think some of those files were closed of how that person might have behaved, but the faculty identified more with this person than the other one, who had a bit of a boring tone to him, but who seemed to have more ethics and nobility to him, and was able to also demonstrate the ability to not have fake confidence like the one they hired, which was similar to who they were, but had the ability to keep growing as a professional, and they didn't hire that person. And I did say, I don't think you'll hire this person, or you didn't hire the person I would have recommended. And of course, it didn't make a difference. Now, in the other cohorts after ours thesis defenses that I went to, because I was still renewing semesters to see if I could somehow salvage this degree with the lack of support from my professors. And I could tell that there was a little bit of lateral violence. I think I had more confidence. A sense of confidence was coming more from the people defending their thesis than their supervisors, either in person or online at the time. I could tell that the elitism and the attitude and a little bit of the lateral violence, bullying, like we know better than you, while the students themselves that were at the point of defending their thesis had real confidence, like they're the people that I would have liked to interact with more than the professors. Aggie is the next paragraph, and Aggie, I had wanted to not address it directly to her, and she said, well, I have the position of head chair of the program right now, you kind of have to. And so she succumbed to her elitism addiction as the head, and she received this, and so I had to address it to her. But I did say everybody should read this in the faculty. This is my real experiences in your program. Aggie, I will never forget your response to the proud quote of my own creation on my business card, in which you quickly answered, I don't think I can be your thesis supervisor. And it was a worldview related statement. It is to safeguard your own mental health. You must always be mindful that you are not a human having a Gaian experience. On the contrary, you are instead a Gaian having a human experience. Now, of course, PhD professors make assumptions probably more than they did when they had they were doing their bachelor's degree. So I think she probably believed there was some supernatural elements to this. She didn't ask questions. When I talked about cybernetics, I think she might have thought it was Dianetics. She might have thought it was Scientology. I'm not sure. I would have had to probe more to see how her thinking was flawed. But this was a statement to just say that in our thinking, we should be more related to, we are a part of this biosphere. we are not humans, at war dominating a biosphere. We are just members of a biosphere, and let's bring the human chauvinism down, which, was a topic mentioned, human chauvinism, in a few of the documents that I've written for them, and some will be read as part of these readings as well. So I'll read it again for you guys. It's the end of page 11. To safeguard your own mental health. And why I say this, I could give a big, long explanation if people ask, but PhD professors don't seem to ask much, and they kind of stop you, or they look like they're listening, but they're like somewhere else in their head and they're not listening. And it happens within seconds. So they don't know nothing about you and what you're trying to say. To safeguard your own mental health, you must always be mindful that you are not a human having a Gaian experience. On the contrary, you are instead a Gaian having a human experience. Okay, so put that first. You are first this entity. Okay, and that is how a worldview would shape a person's thinking. You reframed within minutes, and that was a second, because the first one kind of didn't want to be my thesis supervisor anymore. She was afraid to lose her big office. You reframed within minutes, but the damage was done. I forever excluded VIU as an institution that would support me from and I had written the wrong word there. I wrote prosecution instead of persecution, so I changed it to persecution. As an institution that would support me against persecution when claiming the earth wasn't flat but rather spherical. So here, I mean, if she was still reading this based on the past quote, she would say, wait, he's saying that if he is ahead of the norm in paradigms, that we're not going to stand by him. And really that's what it says, but in a more kind of complex way you would think somebody with a PhD would understand. You know what I could do is I could read some old emails about people who supposedly read this and see what they say about it from the faculty. And sometimes it's like a year later still probing for, hey, did you ever read this? Did I send? Does it make a difference if I would have written my thesis when nobody would have cared to read it or try to understand it or want to participate as a thesis defense supervisor? Around that time, I also participated in a most depressing meeting with the president of VIU, Ralph. During our meeting in his office, it quickly became clear to me that his purpose in life was about economics, not education, which I sense is what will doom us from ever understanding what sustainability really is. I mean, if your paradigm is dominantly economics, therefore magical, you're not going to get a complex system science like sustainability, which is rooted in the natural world. The focus of the teacher strike at VIU prior to our program further indicated that priorities for many were not focused on post-secondary education of any real cultural quality. I have been interested in student or even faculty strikes. So I've done research when they were having to strike at VIU by going outside and talking to them. And I also did research in the north of Ontario with Collège Boréal and saw how, I don't think there's any real places in Canada or most of the world that I think is worth getting into student debt at a post-secondary education based on just the attitudes and the lack of understanding of the big picture from most people that teach there anyways. At this point, my only real memory from faculty members at the time that remains positive is the accountability role modeling and feedback I received from Dave Robinson prior to my MA status. And it's true that he was different during the MA than he was during other lower level courses where he seemed to be a better role model, although not enough. Him and the other teacher that I chose to take courses from and asked to be my reference for the master's degree, I gave them both a one-page evaluation at the end of the semester and said, I don't know why this didn't happen, but here's my evaluation of you. And Dave, in the evaluation, I said, stop inviting students to meet you at the university pub. You don't understand what they're going through sometimes, and they might develop an addiction because you like meeting there. It's not a good thing to do. And when he did that again in the master's degree, I said, hey, you're not applying that, and I'm disappointed. And that's important for us to say these things, right? If we're supposed to see them as role models, they have to act like role models. And VIU doesn't really have a student union. It has a pretend student union. And unless that changes, the quality of education there, even after I wrote this letter, will continue to go down on the international stage, whether, I have interactions with them or I avoid talking about them or not. So I do miss Dave, and I miss Bob Pfister even more. He retired. He helped create the master's degree there, but he retired. He wasn't part of the faculty teaching it. Sadly, I did notice, he was slightly developing some dementia already when I had him in the course before, but I was able to help him stay on track sometimes in the conversations. When I went to the University of Ottawa, we had a professor, the one I had for theories of personality. I'm telling you, he was all over the place. And when I reported that to the Faculty of Psychology at the University of Ottawa, you would think they would care. But at least the University of Ottawa had a student union that would kick teachers out near the end of the semester and do a survey that all the students would do on the course, on the teacher, on the faculty, and reported those findings. And if you have a research to do about which universities to go to or to send your kids to, is find out. That's one of the main things I would say. Let's say there's 3. Well, that's one. If there is a student union that evaluates teachers and that follows up on this, and get proof of this, talk to them, see what the results are from the surveys, what the survey questions are when they evaluate faculty, and how the faculty responds to feedback about their teachers and provides it. Because I tell you, if you've got a master's or a PhD, you stop, if you even had it before, pursuing quality in your work, which has a huge impact on people that go there and see you as somebody worth listening to, when often you are not. You might have been, but academia made you into somebody that is not worth listening to anymore. So anyways, Bob Pfister was a great guy. I wish, it was more at his prime that I met him, and I wish he would have been part of the faculty there during the master's degree, because I think it would have changed my experience of it, and I might not have resigned with extreme prejudice. After reviewing how clear I was in my application letter for my initial entry in the program, that's Appendix 3 that I'll read later, I found I was accepted under false pretenses, as support for my field of interest, sustainability, was never truly realized. Now, just this point, they know is true. They should have, Martin, we failed you. We don't even need to read to the half point of this letter. We failed you. We don't know much about sustainability. You were clear in your letter of intent for the program, and we failed you. I could have been like many other students in the program and simply given the teachers exactly what they wanted, and that would make VIU a domestication center if I participated in this way, not an academic institution, not a school. But that is simply not my style. I suspect some other students may also have fallen ill, if not conforming as many did, perhaps with the hypocrisy to later criticize indirectly in a secure future in which the MA has been attained and a comfortable career assured. There was somebody, I'm not going to name, that was part of the first cohort, and he dropped out and we never got a straight answer. And I think either some addiction or mental health issues were there. And again, he's not somebody that received the supports that he should have. If he would have reached out to me, or we would have formed a collaborative bond in the cohort, I think we, if not my skill sets, but at least the group as well, connecting with him would have been supportive. But we were made to develop in this course a competitive worldview or competitive nature with each other. And I noticed this, and I tested it at some point, because what's it called? SHIRK. There's a research grant, SHIRK, I think it's called, and we were kind of told about it in a way almost to be turned against each other. And I decided to do an altruism test, some psychology research during that time, and approached some of my classmates and said, hey, let's apply together, see what happens, instead of apart in a competitive way. Let's do a project we will all agree and apply. And I would think a shirk would have, like, wow, been impressed with this, unless they were also, thinking that science requires this backstabbing nature that the faculty, because the faculty, and there's many things I didn't write in this letter, that's one of them. Another one is how I would say at least 3 of the faculty teachers we had, and some we had for more than one course, is they talk negatively about their peers, their colleagues during the course. It's not like something they did the entire course, but if we say, oh, that other teacher said this, or they might have had an argument out of class, then they would, some of it would pop out in what they would say. And the 606 from Aggie was extremely unstructured, and it was kind of a waste of money, really, to go sit in that classroom and just shoot the breeze like that. I don't think it was. I don't even think it was a first year level, really, course, and it was just it. It was more confusing than anything, other than just having a few of those things as follow-ups with documents say, this is what we expect from you from the 606 Slim course. Because really, I think we were wasting time and just kept changing ideas about what to do and just being confused, because just the talking keeps going, not the doing. Anyways, that's some of the things that I didn't include in the letter, and some of it will pop out as well when I keep reading. This course of action was impossible for me, as I am a free thinker, the thing of which I am perhaps most proud. My own self-guided training towards becoming a critical thinker and to undo the damage of societal domestication which made me mentally ill at various times in my life has become my greatest achievement. And it's true, when I realized that some of the cycles, including depression, that I went through in my life, a few, including deep depression, were related to people trying to domesticate me when I knew the way they wanted me to think or act was wrong. It created these cycles. So during this time, and choosing to fire them instead of becoming a sheep, also, laid out quite a strong, resilient foundation, and my theory of HSD, which allowed me to never have to worry about any type of mental illness at levels that were strong ever again. Of course, dysthymia, I don't even think is what explains why I cry. I just cry because I'm connected to reality, and I just see the state of the human condition keep declining, and it makes me sad because I care. It's not related to depression, and I explained this in other things, because if to qualify for the diagnosis of depression, certain questions must receive a certain answer, which doesn't apply to me, even though I'll cry for the human condition. Okay. Where was I? At this later stage of my life, I suppose, I refused to compromise in order to attain social connections or a sense of belonging. In my solitude, I realized that a self-directed pat on the back comes from knowing the importance that to thine own self be true. What do I expect as a response to this letter that took me hundreds of hours of time and thousands of dollars to produce? So I'm very clear here is, you owe me for wasting my time. What kind of accountability do you propose? Well, I say, first, I predict that I will most likely receive the same kind of response as all other letters I send to those who suffer from the ailment of what I call Homo sapien domestication, HSD. Very little of a response. Since a very young age, I have enjoyed studying other people's minds in order to make predictions. You are not the only one who enjoyed attempting to figure out how the other mind worked. I'm talking to Aggie because she's looking at me sometimes thinking she knows what diagnosis I may or may not have, just because I disagree with her or I challenge her as a student who kind of makes very good arguments right now about how she's failing. When I was in her office, for example. Even before I wrote this letter, I'm saying, yeah, something's not right. I regret to inform you that you may very well be the same as most, incapable of the task of understanding my mind due mostly to having succumbed, like so many, to HSD. Meaning, when people fit the norm more in whatever environment, like academia, they are, any, or whatever topic or lifestyle or industry they might work in, or family or leisure is, it's become easier and easier over time to see the person that doesn't fit the norm as being wrong. And I could tell that for her, even though I could cite things from, let's say, these ecocentric pioneers of the past and say, well, don't you think that I would want to act like that, or that person would act like that today? And didn't you state that that's a noble way or the right way to see sustainability? But that I would act like this would make me wrong. Again, people that suffer from HSD, is some of them are able to criticize, in theory, certain behaviors that they partake in themselves, although they rationalize they have no choice to partake in it. But they are not able to walk the talk of the solutions or to be outside of the norm. And of course, I could pick that up in her as well. However, if I was asked for my ideal outcome from this letter, it would be the following. I'm going to stop after this, by the way. Your faculty negotiating an agreement with me, and perhaps another institution, in order for me to provide records of some previous achievements, and perhaps to complete ongoing cultural repair project of my own making as well, in the form of documents, presentations, and observed measurable impacts that would justify attaining my full completion of the program through policies of equivalency. Now, policies of equivalency are very, very tough to do in a master's degree, for example, especially a new one that's been approved and that was very challenging to get approved in time for, Vancouver Island University to be able to give this master's degree. Now, I say also this because I'm hinting that there's nobody at VIU that I've met or heard about, and I tried seeing with the geology department if there was a way when I had that geology course with my teacher. But I didn't think there was anybody there that really, I would have preferred having a dual degree or transfer somewhere else with just the final course. But one thing I did, which played a part in me getting banned from the university after that for like a year, is that I approached the Masters of Leadership in Education program to see if, because my thesis was very much related to K-12 curriculum in BC, to see if there could be just a joint thing there, and I would just push that Muslim faculty aside and just work the rest of the time at the same university for this master's. So it could have been a master in sustainable leisure management with a major on leadership and education, And this is where I'll stop it for now. And I appreciate whoever might have paid attention for this entire 29 minutes. Thank you very much.